All 4 city council candidates and both mayoral candidates will participate in a more formal debate. They will each make a 2-minute opening statement and answer 2 questions provided to them prior to this evening. We will then proceed with written questions submitted from the audience and conclude with a 1-minute closing statement for each candidate. Board members will circulate through the audience to collect written questions which will be addressed to all candidates after screening by volunteers. Candidates will have 1 minute to answer each of these questions. A different candidate will begin answering with each round of questions. Questions will continue as long as time allows. The Collinsville City Council candidates include Anthony J. Hausman, Miles C. Nelson, Matthew T. Sebastian, and Richard J. Jeff Stamen. The Collinsville mayoral candidates include John Miller and Nancy Moss. So with that, I'd like to proceed with the 2-minute opening statements, first with John Miller.
First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for being here this evening, and mostly the committee that brought this forward. This is an exciting time for our great city. I want to be the mayor for this great city, and I want to be the mayor to take us to even greater things. Believe it or not, we have been noticed. After all these years that we've been here, why is it just now that we've been noticed? We have put it all together, all of the fantastic attributes that our city has to offer. And people have noticed. Yes, we have been found. Not by chance, but by hard work, selling our community, rebranding, and making our city look attractive. We are finally being looked at as a destination place and making an impact with tourism, economic development, improving our infrastructure, making strides as we look at business as a whole, with a great team of elected officials, city manager, administration, staff, and a large group of energized volunteers who love our city. We are truly a city on the move. We are bringing our parks back to the level that our citizens deserve. 2 major corporations have brought their corporate headquarters to our city, Ameren, Illinois, and First Collinsville Bank. Gateway Center is now owned and operated by the city of Collinsville, and for the last 6 months has shown a strong profit. Our new water plant is online next month. Our uptown is thriving with new restaurants and upcoming businesses. Like the 2 crazy, fun-loving guys from California who threw a dart at a map and it landed on Collinsville. They came, they filmed, and they saw a community that was more than what they expected. They were pleased and they showed it to the world. Look up Last Minute Trips on YouTube. Yes, I want to be your mayor for the next 4 years. The best is yet to come. Thank you.
Nancy Moss.
Thank you. I'd like to also to thank the committee that created this forum. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. I'm running for mayor because Collinsville is at a crossroads. I love this city and I want to see the best for us. The official published statistics on how Collinsville is doing financially are very disappointing, however. I want to see a real turnaround, employee pensions well funded, bonds repaid on time, substantial economic development, and no more adding to the burdens of debt and taxes on our residents. I think these reasons will speak for themselves as this forum continues, so I'm going to suspend my other remarks in this opening statement because I just received news a few hours ago that will illustrate why I believe we need to change leadership. Many of you know that months ago, the Collinsville Council sued CARD, the Recreation District, concerning the several million dollars that CARD had on hand and earmarked for, by law, to be used to reduce CARD's $21 million debt. It was stunning to me that the city would essentially sue its own citizens to seize taxes we'd already paid to CARD and force us to pay them again to pay off the debt. This was not the agreement when we worked on a dissolution petition that was passed by 80% of our voters. At an open hearing today, and here's the news, in an open hearing today in Judge's Chambers, Judge Harrison found that the city had no standing in the case and tossed them off the lawsuit. Councilman Cheryl Brombelich does still have standing and is still on the lawsuit as an individual and will be required to post a $50,000 security bond. There will be more questions about the decision made today, but one question arises. Has Mrs. Brombelich been reimbursing the city for her portion of the legal expenses? If not, will the city's lawyer be working pro bono? Regardless of how this all turns out, it's costing taxpayers at least $10,000 a month in interest as the CARD debt, interest to the CARD debt until the case is resolved. Having said all that, this is actually a perfect example of why I'm running for mayor. Thank you.
Anthony Hausman.
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name's Tony Hausman, and like everyone, I want to thank you for attending tonight and your interest in the election. Thanks to Aline and the candidate forum and the committee for putting this together. Moved to Collinsville in 1990, along with my wife Rhonda, and actually, I guess moved here because my best friend lived here from college. Loved the city. Raised 2 children here who were schooled at St. Peter and Paul and graduated from Collinsville High School. I've been on the Collinsville Planning Commission for 7 years, serving the last 2 years as chairman. Been on the Economic Development Commission for 2 years, and previously was a board member for St. Peter and Paul School and a president for St. Peter and Paul School. I think the city is trending in a wonderful, very positive direction, particularly over the past couple of years. You know, when I go to meetings across the metro area to whether it's business or personal or city business, I see a lot of positive buzz about Collinsville. Interest in businesses that are wanting to locate here is an all-time high, and we could see that in the Planning Commission, folks that come before us, and the EDC. And I want to continue in that direction so far as attracting businesses here, particularly focus that around smart development and infill development within the city, which has a greater net gain for the city. Sales tax is a major revenue driver for the city. We need a few more at-bats, need a lot more at-bats and people in the lineup. We can sustain excellent services that way. I want to see more Amerons, First Collinsville Bank, Gateway RV. I want to see more Old Heralds, Turn 2, and I think that my enthusiasm and previous sales experience towards this could be a great advocate to the city. And I thank you very much.
Miles Nelson.
I want to thank you all for coming tonight. My name is Miles Nelson, and I want to begin my opening statement by giving you a brief overview of why I'm running. I'm running for city council because I love the city I live in and its wonderful people, and I believe that we deserve better. The people of Collinsville deserve a councilman who is honest, transparent, and accountable. The people of Collinsville deserve a councilman who is only beholden to their constituents, not other city administrators. And the people of Collinsville deserve a new and energetic councilman with fresh ideas to lead us towards success. I have a positive yet realistic view on the future of Collinsville. While some on this stage tonight may tell you that everything is perfectly fine and that we're in the best shape we've ever been in, they're either lying to you or they have very low expectations. For example, we are currently $46,653,549 in debt. And while the 2018 report has not yet been made public, it is almost guaranteed that that number is higher, considering we added $4 million of debt in just 1 year alone, from 2016 to 2017. Also, we have lost 322 residents in 1 year, 322 taxpayers lost. Before some say these numbers are false, this report came directly from the office of the Illinois Comptroller, Susanna Mendoza. With all of this said, we have serious problems that are knocking on our door. In just a few short years, we have an $8 million bond payment due on the Collinsville Crossings Shopping Center. And I'm very concerned that taxes will be raised once again come payment time, since we do not have sufficient funds. For most of you, a lot of this is the first time you're hearing all this, and it might come as a shock. This is why we desperately need a more accountable and transparent councilman who will tell the people of Collinsville the entire truth, not just temporary good news. Folks, I will set a new standard for councilmen, one that promotes transparency and being much more open to the public. Thank you.
Matthew Sebastian.
Thank you. Pardon me, I don't feel comfortable speaking while sitting down. I'm used to standing up, but I'll do my best here. My name is Matthew Sebastian, husband, father, son, brother, veteran, volunteer firefighter. My family has been here for generations. My daughter was baptized at St. Peter and Paul. My wife and I married there. My grandfather was August Viviano, hometown hero, businessman, grocer, luminary figure. I already know what's going to be said tonight. Progress, enthusiasm, but the numbers tell a different story. Honestly, they're downright bleak. We're losing people, businesses, and residents. Just take a walk or a drive around town and you'll see I'm right. We're headed down a path that's unsustainable. The city of Collinsville has become a microcosm of Illinois. Up to the eyeballs in debt, underfunded pensions for our firefighters and police department, residents fleeing, revenue streams ending. What are we going to do when our bond debts come due? Kick the can down the road like our state? We can't even pay the interest, let alone the principal. Our next bond interest rate will be based on these poor performances. Okay, you're thinking, so what? What are you going to do about it? Well, I don't have all the answers, but that's greatly attributed to not knowing all the questions. We have to FOIA to get any real information or look it up in census and audit data. I haven't been on the council or planning committee steering the ship, but we know who has been steering, and we know where we're headed, towards an iceberg. Do we go full steam and hope this isn't a Titanic, or do we slow down, take a look, and make smart decisions? Thank you.
Jeff Stamen.
I'd also like to thank the group for having us here tonight. I'm going to veer a little bit away from my intro because the advantage of being last, I heard a lot of the stuff moving down the line. It's unfortunate that three candidates have painted a very negative picture of Collinsville. I think most people have saw the progress in Collinsville, have saw that there's been a big change in the last 2 to 3 years of positive movement with the city council, with city administration. We are in very good financial shape with adequate reserves. We have plans in place, and they've been in place for years, to pay the bond debts off. Those are normal things that the city does. And our city just got in $20 million in debt to build a new water plant. That's common. You finance those things. You get bonds, you get loans from IEPA. So the negative image that's been painted for Collinsville is not factual. And I encourage everyone here to educate themselves on what is really happening in Collinsville. Very transparent. We've been more transparent the last 3 years, 4 years than Collinsville's ever been. A lot more discussion at city council meetings. So we've corrected a lot of things that were let go and neglected. It was cut to our emergency services, public works departments, equipment was fire trucks over 20 years old, positions that were not filled, even though they're authorized, they were not filled. We've corrected that. We brought our emergency services back up to where they need to be. We put a police communication system in place that should have been done 10 years ago by this city, and it was never done. Every other community around here has that capability. We've tried to bring, we're playing 5, 10 years of catch-up, and we've done a good job at that. Thank you.
Next is the first of 2 questions that were provided to all the candidates before this evening. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer the questions. And the first question is, What experience and skills do you possess that qualify you for the position for which you are running, and what are your top 2 priorities? Okay, Nancy Moss.
Thank you. I served as a Collinsville City Councilman for 12 years, from 2005 to 2017. I have a strong business background. I was a vice president on the founding management team of Shop and Save and served on the board of directors. Shop and Save essentially reinvented the grocery business in this region. And by the way, the recent sale of the stores due to bad management by the current owners was heartbreaking. My 2 top priorities are failed economic development and tax and spend financial practices. These have already led to higher taxes and will continue to do so if we don't make decisive changes soon. This administration's failure to set aside adequate money for bond payments, employee pensions, and other financial obligations will cause the city to receive a lower credit rating, and I stand by that, and pay higher interest rates on debt, leading to even higher taxes, which can cause even more residents and businesses to leave our city. Our population is shrinking and our household income has dropped. Not very long ago, the median household income in Collinsville was $62,000, annual income was $62,386. In 2017, which is the last data that we have, it dropped to $52,575. That's a $10,000 decrease. And in just a few years, it's been mentioned about the bond that comes due. And also, the 2018 and 2019 budget did not include any assumptions about the cost of acquiring Gateway Center or the city parks. Thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Hausman.
Thank you. I think there's a couple areas that will help me with my experience with being council. Number 1 is my business experience and managerial experience of 25 years. I've been in business development, negotiating sales contracts, both within the public sector and the private sector, in information technology and cybersecurity. I've held roles at the director level in terms of P&L responsibility, putting business plans together, managing budgets, letting people go, unfortunately, hiring people, and I think those scars and that experience helps me with decisions that need to be made in the community, whether they're difficult or easy. Continuing our efforts for business development and jobs to Collinsville, to me, is thing 1. Well, I know we've got a lot of competition. Other cities have the same thing in mind, but I think we've made a lot of progress in the past few years. We need to ratchet that up, and I think we're headed in the right direction. Number 2, I like to find avenues to help increase our housing stock, subdivisions and infill development, and to focus on revitalization of some of our neighborhoods. Like to have recent college grads, maybe there's a program to have them come to Collinsville. The first-time home buyers program is an excellent start, great out-of-the-box idea. Need to capitalize on that, get input from the citizens, and see what we can do to bring other opportunities to the city for that. Thank you.
Mr. Nelson.
Before I get into this, you always hear, we have a plan, we have a plan. What's your plan? I certainly don't see one. And $46 million in debt, that doesn't sound financially stable to me. So on to the question. I'm a 2016 graduate of Collinsville High School, and I was fortunate enough to have been a part of the leadership of the largest student council in the nation at CHS. I am currently a junior political science education major at SIUE. There I have dedicated the last 3 years professionally researching effective public administration through the university, and currently sit on the board of the Association of Political Science, dealing with curriculum review and improvement. I have been named a President's Scholar of Leadership through the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library, and I look forward to bringing my leadership skills to the council. I'm not a politician. I'm a concerned citizen who is deeply worried about the future of Collinsville, because all of these decisions that are being made are not only impacting the current generation, they're also impacting my generation, the future of Collinsville. And this determines whether my age group decides to stay in Collinsville or move elsewhere. Rest assured, I'm here to stay, and I will work harder than I have ever before to ensure that my generation does the same and invests in Collinsville. With that said, my 2 biggest issues that I'm concerned about are accountability and economic growth. Thank you.
Mr. Sebastian.
For the last 7 years, I've been working in government administration, and I have over 18 years in the military. I have extensive planning experience, including strategic and base planning committees, which includes planning and budget for housing, green space, traffic, and more. My top priorities are being a good steward of taxpayer money and safety. I lead from the front, not from the top. I'm a volunteer firefighter. I have a rare understanding of what our first responders go through and what the local government can provide. Some people may have low expectations, but if we held ourselves to a higher standard, we wouldn't be in such poor financial straits. Higher standards like keeping our contracts, like only letting union employees work heavy machinery and residency requirements by our top officials. Maybe less time in arbitration and more time ensuring we make sound decisions. Thank you.
Mr. Stamen?
Yes. My experience is 15 years in the Planning Commission, a business owner for over 35 years in Collinsville, and 22 years as Building and Zoning Supervisor and Assistant Community Development Director for the City of O'Fallon. It's given me a lot of insight to city government, and it's helped me introduce a lot of the programs we were able to do here. The key to me running is experience, and you've heard it here. I would like to do this, but I'm talking about real experience. I've lived it, I've done it, and that makes a difference, because a lot of the accusations that have been made tonight about the state of the city are strictly not true, because they haven't been involved in what's been going on. So I encourage people to get involved, whether it's a commission or whatever, and learn what's really happening. And the things aren't so bleak. Structural change in the government, we've done that. There's a different culture, business culture, and also maintain professional management for the city is my two goals.
Mr. Miller?
My experience, I've worked for the city for over 45 years, 31 as a firefighter, going from the rank of firefighter up through lieutenant to captain to shift commander. I've been on the council since 1973, 11 and a half of those years as a mayor. I've seen some good times and I've seen some bad times. And right now, we're at the peak, the best the city has ever been. I don't know how anyone can sit here and say that economic development is bad in the city of Collinsville. We have just taken on 2 corporate entities with 450 white-collar jobs. We're the third, we hold 1/3 of all Madison County tourism. And you show me a city with no debt, and I will show you a city that's not doing anything. 20 million of that $46 million of debt that you're talking about is a new sewer plant that we got low interest loans on. We are working our tails off trying to bring the city back to what it should be. And I'm going to continue because the stop sign's up, because the stop sign was up for my opponent for a minute and a half past when the sign was up. I think it's very important to realize that looking into the inside of what's going on in a city from the outside is a very different program. You don't win government finance office accountability certificates 6 or 7 years in a row with being in debt and not being able to form great decisions in the finance department. That doesn't happen if you're in debt the way these people are up here saying that we are. We are not. We are in the best fiscal responsibility that we have been in the last 10 years. Thank you.
So now we'll go to our next question that all the candidates had received prior to this evening. And so that everyone feels like they're treated fairly, we'll strictly enforce the 1-minute time. So once you hear the phone ring, that means you should stop. If you don't stop, then I'll have to interrupt you. Okay? So the question is, the city of Collinsville's unique set of assets include Cahokia Mounds, the Gateway Center, Willoughby Farm, Brooks Ketchup Bottle, Splash City Water Park, a growing entertainment district, and of course, Collinsville's enviable location. How would you utilize these and other assets in order to attract new residents and additional business development? Ms. Moss?
Thank you. These are all, these attractions that are mentioned are all valuable assets. I'm amazed by the number of people from all over the country who visit the Quetzalcoatl and the mounds from all over the world for the mounds. I think we can do more to bring them to uptown and other areas of town, and I'll vigorously work towards that. The main issue, however, is our overall lack of economic development in Collinsville. Nearly 3 years ago, this administration appointed the new city manager to do 2 jobs he'd never held before: city manager and director of economic development. Our economic development has failed. Take a drive around town, as someone already suggested, and look at all the empty buildings: Collinsville Crossings, around the Schnuck store on the Beltline, around Coles, Main Street, Eastport, to name a few. The new Jimmy John's open and the other one closed. Much of the new development we have is city-owned and funded by taxpayers. The takeover of Gateway Center and its $5 million of debt, for example. Our economic development is broken. Neighborhoods,
Thank you,
cities.
Ms. Moss.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Hausman?
Good. Well, thanks. You know, the first thing is, that's an impressive list of assets. I think everyone would agree with that. And one of the things that we need to do is encourage those places and the leaders there to market them together, tie them together. And the reason is, you know, for example, at the Gateway, if you had audio and visual displays, what else is going on around town? The same thing at Monk's Mound, doing the same thing there. Tie them together, because it's proven that if people like to hang here, they like to live here, or like to hang here, experience time here, dine here, they like to live here. We also need, one of the things that's amazing to me is our participation in Great Rivers and Routes. That is huge. Those people came and courted Collinsville. They want Collinsville as part of that, and they're marketing the city aggressively. It's wonderful. Additionally, through some of the forums we had with the Planning Commission, people were drawing bike paths all over this place. They're connecting the city. They're connecting these assets. And it's one thing, you know, to get, thank you.
Mr. Nelson?
I don't know about all of you, but I was raised with the idea of you don't spend money you don't have. And these numbers are coming straight from the Illinois Comptroller. And if you don't think debt has an impact on a community, take a look at the state of Illinois. People are voting with their feet and they're leaving. Now on to the question. Of course, it's very important to ensure that these landmarks are properly funded and well kept. And this also includes our parks after the dissolution of CARD. And I'm proud to say that I worked very hard collecting signatures for the dissolution of CARD to appear on the ballot. As mentioned earlier, the current council voted to sue the people of Collinsville in regards to tax dollars we already paid to CARD. And just say a judge ruled that the city had no standing and they were out of the lawsuit. Think about that for a minute. The current council voted to sue the people of Collinsville over tax dollars we already paid to go towards CARD's debt. That is simply absurd. Simply absurd. Thank you.
Mr. Sebastian?
Some of these assets are better than others. Actually, one of them is new to Collinsville ownership. In fact, I worked hard and fought for for that acquisition. While I was out sweating day after day getting signatures, our boat crew did little to nothing. Would you believe it if I told you not everyone up here even signed the petition? I'd believe it. It's no surprise then, I guess, that the city of Collinsville sued CARD for your money. How's that going, by the way? Lawsuit was thrown out. 80% of you voted to dissolve CARD. Due to the dissolution of CARD, we're now eligible for park grants. For example, up to $28,000 for the senior center. But even with small victories, if we don't come to something sensible here, Collinsville is going to be another CARD. Folks, if we don't have someone in office that knows how to leverage these assets, it doesn't matter what we have. Thank you.
Mr. Stamen?
There again, I'll speak from experience of being there. We are linking all these assets together. There is a lot of things being done. If you view the council meetings, look what's going on. We are taking advantage of all these sites. Part of the Great Streets initiative we just did in St. Louis Road is linking those areas to old Cahokia Mounds. The card issue, I can't go without saying, the citizens did not get sued by the city of Collinsville. The citizens are being protected. The city of Collinsville asked that that money go back to the citizens of Collinsville, not to the city coffers, to the citizens of Collinsville. There again, we're getting fed some information that isn't quite correct, so I would deflect to that. I'm proud of what we've done to protect the taxpayers of Collinsville, and we will continue to do that.
Mr. Miller.
All of these attributes that were mentioned go hand in hand with what the city did by joining the Rivers and Routes Tourism Bureau. By being a major member of that Tourism Bureau, we have been able to capitalize that 1/3 of tourism in Madison County. Tourism brings money. For every person that comes to the city of Collinsville through tourism, it brings $70 for every visit. But that's not just it. We are working with state and federal employees or federal agencies to bring national park registration to Cahokia Mounds, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, only 2 in the country. We have to capitalize on that. It is part of our tourism and economic development.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Okay. Next, we have questions from the audience, and each candidate. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry now. Yeah, you. Well, this will be the questions from the audience first, and your closing statements come at the very end. Mm-hmm. All right. So these are the questions from the audience. You'll have 1 minute to answer each question. When you hear the cell phone rings, please stop talking. The first question, and this is directed to Mr. Hausman, and each candidate will then answer the question, is what role do you see Miners Theater playing in the economic vitality of Uptown and the city as a whole?
It's a great question. I think all of us are aware of, some of the history of Miners Theater and the back and forth that we've had with that. With the glass half full, would love that to look like the Waldy Theater up in Edwardsville. They've turned a profit up there. It's very positive. But we got to find a way to help, fund that with a benefactor who could have the passion and interest to come in and really turn that place around. I think, I was a theater major in college. I'm all for performing arts. But again, we have to step very carefully about, where that funding comes from, whether it's volunteer, where you have it. But I do believe that it could be a great asset for the city.
Mr. Nelson?
I believe it could be a great asset for the city, and I'm in favor of improving Miners Theater to ensure that it does. And this is all part of a bigger picture, as far as improving our current businesses or theaters, for this matter. And as far as attracting new ones, we need to change how we run things in Collinsville. I will work together to improve our economic development plan so it better supports smarter investments and better supports our workers, businesses, and the long-term environment of Collinsville. Also, I think we need to improve our public message so that it maximizes our strengths and minimizes our weaknesses better. We need to make it very clear to the public and surrounding areas that the city of Collinsville is open for business. Thank you.
Mr. Sebastian?
I've never been one who liked to say, well, there should be a law, or we should have the taxpayer pay for that. I would echo the sentiments that say, well, maybe we should find a benefactor, but I'll go one further. I think that the city of Collinsville is a city of generous people, and I think if we had the right fundraising efforts and we had more volunteering and charity events led by the people here in Collinsville, I think we'd get a lot more of that, and we wouldn't have to force people to pay out of their taxes. We wouldn't have to increase taxes and take it out of pockets of people that don't want to give to that cause. Thank you.
Mr. Stamen?
Yes, I'm very much in support of seeing Miners Theater thrive in downtown. It's going to have a huge impact on the viability of downtown, the businesses there. That in itself will increase economic development in the downtown area. There's a committee now, a foundation group that is spearheading that effort. The city will work with them closely and do whatever we can to assist in that, because I think we all see the huge benefit in making that work for the city. And let's consider the alternative. Either it's redone, renovated, and made successful, like Tony said about like Wildy, or it's gone. And do we want it gone? My family has a rich history in this city, and a big part of that has been Miners Theater and the Miners and what they represented. Just like the Collins House and some other historical factors, it's big.
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
Miners Theater is as much of an icon in the city of Collinsville as the water tower. The men that worked in the mines in this great city many years ago, the Italian heritage, they all put up their homes to build that fantastic building. We currently have a fantastic board that is working very hard in trying to accumulate funds and make sure that it does not fall to ruins. As soon as we can get some restrooms in that building, we can open it and we can use it and start garnishing some funds to make it what it should be.
Okay, Ms. Moss?
Thank you. First of all, we have an amazing volunteer group already and have had who do great work with that building. They're out asking for donations, and we have people in the community businesses that are funneling donations to them, in-kind donations. It's a great group, but it's a daunting task. The city's already given several $100,000 to the miners, and I want to see it successful just as everybody else does, I'm sure. But and the illusion that was brought with the Wildy and the miners, I realize that it's a totally different situation. The miners is a treasure, and we need to support people on a personal level and get benefactors and renew efforts. We got to be out there all the time and support the volunteers to get benefactors for that theater. It's an awesome addition to the community. Thank you.
Okay. The next question from the audience is, would you support making Collinsville a sanctuary city to protect residents who may be undocumented immigrants? And we'll start with Mr. Nelson.
I would have to think long and hard, and I would have to weigh both options before I made that decision. I would have to do more research.
Mr. Sebastian?
Well, this is a very touchy subject. I know quite a few immigrants, both legal and illegal. They're all great people, and I want them to succeed in life. I want them to live and love and laugh just like everybody does. There's no reason, just because they're undocumented, in my eyes, that they shouldn't be able to be happy here in Collinsville. But that comes, unfortunately, with a string, and that string may very well be federal funding, state funding, depending on how the laws go in the future. It could be really bad for Collinsville, but personally, I think they're all great people. Thank you.
Mr. Stamen?
I would have to say, similar to what Mr. Miles said, I have never thought about that on a local level, small city like Collinsville. But without doing more research, my first thought is I would want to be more in line with what the federal law dictates and not try to make an exception to what Collinsville does.
Mr. Miller?
The federal law states if you come into this country illegally, you're considered an illegal alien. And in my thinking, being a veteran, we have so many veterans out there that are homeless right now that fought and served for our country. And the federal government is not stepping up. The states aren't stepping up to take care of our veterans. But yet, we have cities and states that are giving away monies and homes and to people who come into this country illegally to make a profit on their crossing the border illegally. My vote would be, let's give it to the veterans who have fought and died and given their lives for our country.
Ms. Moss?
Thank you. This is a nation of laws, and I could not support making Collinsville a sanctuary city. I believe that causes so many problems with law enforcement, with safety, even for the well-being of the people who are illegal in this nation. I run a food pantry, and I run into a lot of situations on a weekly basis. I would not recommend or condone turning Collinsville into a sanctuary city. We need to obey the laws of the land, and to me, that's the federal law in this situation.
Mr. Hausman?
Well, thank you. I too, quite honestly, frankly, don't really have an informed position on this. But I do believe, though, that people have the right for safety. They have the right to work. I know just recently listening to KMOX here the past couple of days, they're talking about small businesses that are struggling, particularly seasonal businesses with trying to find people to fill those jobs. I struggle with this, and I agree that it is federal law, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be compassionate and helpful to those folks who need it. So I apologize, I don't have a firm yes or no on that, but perhaps in the future.
The next question from the audience is, in your estimation, what's the best indication of social and economic health in the city of Collinsville and the surrounding community? Mr. Sebastian?
Well, right now, there is actually a survey that's available, and I encourage everyone to fill out that survey. Obviously, I had no part in it since I'm not on the council. Maybe I will be, if you vote for me. But those types of surveys are great in order to determine how people feel about where their lot in life is at the time. And who better to hear about how Collinsville is doing, how people are doing, than from them? Because what I do might make me happy, but if someone else was doing what I was doing, they might not be happy. It's better just to get it directly from them through these surveys. Thank you.
Mr. Stamen?
Yes, I think one of the good indicators is how your community is growing economically and residential. We are working very strongly now to increase that development. There are several good possibilities coming up in residential development, and that we don't need people moving out to other communities that have a nicer housing stock. We're trying to do a lot to keep our housing stock up in this community, plus build new homes. If you're not doing that, you're not growing, and we are taking the steps to make sure we're working in that direction. It's the whole package. It's how your city looks to the people driving around, whether they want to move here or not, or whether they want to bring their business here. And so we're looking to any way into changing the image of the city to make sure we're moving in the right direction.
Mr. Miller,
Yes, would you please read that question over again for me? I missed part of it.
in your estimation, what's the best indication of social and economic health in the city of Collinsville and the surrounding community?
We're going to find that out. As Mr. Sebastian said, we have started a questionnaire. It's a national city survey. It asks a random 2,000 people or so in a city to answer that verbatim, and it's also online. Anybody can take that survey and give us that estimation. But I feel that our city is in great shape. Yes, we do have some economic problems with socioeconomics, with low-income families and so forth, but we will get a better grasp on it when we do our homework and we go through the study and we find out exactly the key areas that we need to work on, and that's building a city, finding the statistics and then moving forward on those statistics.
Okay, Ms. Moss?
Well, my assessment is as you mentioned, social, I think we're great. If you don't believe me, go on Facebook and put something negative about Collinsville on Facebook and you will be torched. People who live here, the vast majority love living here. I love it. And they take pride in their community and they care about the community. So I think that part is great. Economically, though, I think we're not as healthy as we should be. In fact, if we've thrown out a lot of numbers here tonight, but in the last 10 years, the total assessed valuation of our community has only risen 3.4%, and that's not good. So people-wise, great. Economically, not so great.
Mr. Hausman?
Thanks. I really go and kind of think about what I hear when I talk to people in the community. I was walking yesterday, my wife and I asked some folks at the end of the street, how do you feel about the city? What's your, and she said, I think things are going great. Don't you? I was at lunch today and having lunch with a businessman here in Collinsville, and I asked him the same question, how do you feel? And he said, you know what? I think I am more jazzed about this city in any time in my life since the 1980s. And I forgot who the mayor was then, so I apologize. The enthusiasm I mentioned earlier when I go to networking events and so on across the metro area, that to me is a good indicator. The positive attitude goes a lot further than a negative attitude, and I think that's a good indicator of our social and economic health.
Mr. Nelson?
I think a good indicator is the level of accountability and transparency of a city. If the people aren't informed, then you can't have good social and economic health. And that's why, if elected, I've pledged to hold regular and public town halls outside of the city council meetings in an effort to bring honesty, integrity, and accountability back to the council. And I've also pledged to refuse the pay that councilmen receive and donate it to charitable causes in Collinsville, because I believe that it would be an absolute honor to serve the people of Collinsville, and I will never take a dime from the taxpayers. Thank you.
All right, the next question from the audience is this. Would you support either a citywide ban on single-use plastic bottles or single-use plastic bags? Or can you suggest action our city can take to reduce plastic production and waste? And that question goes to first to Mr. Stamen.
I can't say that I would support a ban on it. I think that would create, if there's not a more universal ban, it would create a very tough thing to enforce in the city. But I think one thing we can do is increase our recycling efforts, and we've already made efforts to do that. Some of our events, we have increased how we're addressing recycling on the events in downtown. We have recently went to the different type of containers on the pickup and recycling, so we've made some efforts, and I think to me that is one of the best ways to address the huge amount of plastics that we're dealing with, is encourage more and better recycling efforts within the city.
Mr. Miller?
In the last 4 months, we have put together a sustainability committee to look at those issues, to see where we need to work, what we need to do, and that committee is out doing the legwork and going to report back to the City Council with their findings. That's being done through community development. We have 5 great people on that committee, all with a sustainability background, and I give them a great offer of hope that they can come back with something that will be usable, that the city can take and use and help keep our city and our planet clean.
Okay, Ms. Moss?
Well, as many of you may know, there is going through committee now where the state of Illinois is looking at passing a tax on the use of plastic bags. First of all, I would like to see anything be done at a level different in the city level. I can't say that I am in favor of another tax, obviously, by the state of Illinois, but I think that this is something that we've got a lot of businesses in town that use, Walmarts and the grocery stores and that sort of thing. I think that we ought to rely more on them to decide what works best for them and for their customers. I'm all for, I recycle mine, but as far as being a citywide ban by the city council, I don't think this would be the time to do something like that.
Okay, Mr. Hausman?
Yeah, as I sit up here with my plastic bottle, I will tell you that I too had heard about the tax and the initiatives. I would be very interested in understanding the impacts of that if there was a ban. I'd like to be as part of that. Quite frankly, my wife will tell you I can't stand plastic bags. I take the recycle bags. It is an issue, but I do think that something at a larger level would probably be more effective as opposed to putting hardships on cities because some city may not allow it here and it's allowed over here. I think at the state level would probably be a better approach.
Mr. Nelson?
So I was actually just talking with a concerned citizen before the event tonight about it, and she expressed her concern to me, and she told me that there is a newly formed grassroots committee that focuses on this, and I would really want to hear more from the people and what they want and do some more research on the topic. But I will say that I am always open to new ideas, and I will always vote in the best interest of the people of Collinsville, so I would love to hear more about what the citizens think on this topic.
Mr. Sebastian?
Thank you. Well, I feel like even though we disagree on a lot of stuff up here, this question seems like it's getting a pretty good consensus. And I think that's good to know that we can come together on things if we really look at each other. But let me answer the question directly. Citywide ban, I agree. We need to do something. Let's let the state legislature decide because of the little micro bans here and there. They never really work very well. But besides researching what those micro bans would do, I think that we need to be on the forefront of technology and recycling and think about making or utilizing a market for those bags and other plastic goods. For example, Adidas just sold 1 million shoes made out of ocean plastics. Thank you.
The next question is, some people in our community say that the city government could be more transparent. What have you done, or how do you plan to continue to improve transparency in the city of Collinsville? Mr. Miller?
I guess it depends on what you actually call transparency. What one person's definition of transparency is much different than another. As far as the city is concerned, I think we have gone the extra step in televising our council meetings. We televise and film our boards and commissions. Everything is made available on the website. All of our public meetings are now, and our discussions amongst the council are done in open forum in our council meetings, being filmed. It's all available online. We couldn't be more transparent. All of our documents, all of our ordinances, all of our everything is available. And all you have to do is ask or go online, and you can download just about anything that goes on in the city.
Ms. Moss?
Well, I really believe that we're less transparent than we used to be, and part of it honestly is not the city's fault, because there are no newspapers that report anymore on what's going on. We used to, back when I was on the council, the News Democrat would put an article in the paper the very next day telling everything was going on. People didn't have to look for that. Simply saying that we put things online, a lot of people don't go online, or they don't have the time to go online, or they don't want to research it. So it is, I believe we are less transparent, and I believe that some of that is by accident or by circumstance, but I also believe that the city should be a lot more transparent. I don't agree, and I could probably talk about that later, that I don't think we're transparent as we should be.
Mr. Hausman?
I think the city, just observing has come a long way in 3 to 5 years with transparency. And I do agree with the reduction in newspapers. It's difficult because sometimes we had talked in the planning committee that sometimes I don't know what the heck's going on in the community, but you got to find other ways. The kiosks that we have throughout the community to list events and so on. That's how I knew that there was an election coming up. The council meetings are now constructed in a format that there's discussion and presentation first, and then an action, taken at the next meeting, as opposed to all that happening at once and with limited input from citizens and discussion. The meetings are streamed and recorded. And I think the city's done a fabulous job of increasing the number of workshops and forums. We have a lot within the Planning Commission. We are getting excellent feedback from people who are at these presentations. We've found commission members because of this. That's how I got involved with the city. Thank you.
Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, this has been a central theme of my campaign, giving power back to the people and giving them the entire story, just not pieces of it. Again, I pledge to set a new standard for councilmen and hold regular and public town halls, giving people many more chances to express their concerns and in an effort to restore accountability and transparency. So I absolutely believe that greater accountability, more transparency, that's a big step in moving Collinsville forward.
Mr. Sebastian?
Thank you. In regards to increasing transparency, I agree, and I do also want to have more town halls outside of the city council meetings where people can ask questions. Maybe if they don't understand something, they can ask and we can explain it to them. Also would like to maybe have some sort of educational material created, videos or PowerPoints that will explain a lot of what's going on to the people, because those quick lessons that we can teach to our citizens and make them more informed is very important. Beyond that, I feel like being accessible to the people is very important, responding to emails and phone calls in a timely manner, although for some reason sometimes not everyone in the city does that. I think that I could. Thank you.
Mr. Stamen?
Yeah, this is very good topic for me, because when I came on the council in 2015, I was told by the city manager at the time that I asked him why we're not having workshops anymore, why wasn't there more discussion on ordinances. He told me as long as I have 3 votes, he said, I'm bringing it to the council and all I need is a vote, and I know it's going to pass. And I didn't like that. I didn't like the way that was done. And that had happened over a period of 5 years where the things were very controlled, what got to the council floor. Quick meetings. Well, we've changed that. And one of the things this council has done, and I was one of the ones that pushed it, we got back to discussing ordinances beforehand. When we did the occupancy and property maintenance program, we started working 6 months ahead of time and had workshops, we had stakeholder meetings where we brought people in and interviewed them. I think we brought 30, 40 people in to discuss those. So we've been very transparent. I guess I'm living in a different universe. We've done a good job on that.
The next question is this. Some people in our community say that we still have several road, sidewalk, and drainage deficiencies. What do you think? How would you mitigate those concerns or change the situation? Ms. Moss?
Without knowing what the scope of these concerns are, I think, we have a Public Works Department, and I would certainly ensure that when people's concerns are brought forward, that they would be directed there, and then that the situation would go up through the ranks, up to the council, and even to legal proceedings. When I was on the council, we had several issues that were actually either litigated, hopefully, and usually resolved by the Public Works people and the council. So I think that it's important to make sure that we have an open track for people to have questions like that and situations like that to be brought forward if in proper procedure, so that those things can be addressed and solved.
Mr. Hausman?
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned this in my opening statement. I do think that there are some areas of the city that deserve to be improved. The city has put forth a capital improvement program that identified projects to help. If you can't do anything unless you have a plan, right? So I think that's, congratulations that they're doing that, moving forward with identifying those areas in need. The Great Streets Initiative is just another example, again, of identifying an area where, there's some things that can be done here. And so some of the output of that meeting and those meetings were excellent. There was a lot of citizen feedback, but the fact that we have a capital improvement plan in place, I think, goes a long way to deciding what's going to happen next. And I do agree that there are areas with the city that need broader support and help. Thank you.
Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, infrastructure improvements go hand in hand with economic growth, with new businesses and jobs in Collinsville. That means more tax revenue that can be used for that. And I think that, for example, the improvements on Main Street, they're great and wonderful, and I would like to see more of those improvements throughout the city. And we could do that by improving our economic development plan and fostering in more economic growth.
Mr. Sebastian?
I'm sure everyone agrees that this winter has been trying, and I would like to extend a thanks to the Streets Department for taking care of as well as you have, honestly. Whenever I see someone ask, how are the roads, I chuckle to myself because, well, I live in Collinsville and we have a really good road crew. So as far as that question, which happens all the time, I think they're good. But as far as do we need improvements? Yes, we do, especially in places that are dangerous. And that's where we really need to focus our attention. Where do people walk to go to the grocery store to work? We need to address that. Are they safe places to walk in and ride your bike, or sometimes a wheelchair? We need to focus on those, and if they are under the purview of a different government, we need to talk to them too.
Mr. Stamen?
Yes, this is another area that when I was elected in 2015, the city was in shambles in this. We were so far behind. We were playing that 5-10-year catch-up again. Our street department was down 4 to 5 employees that had been cut from previous levels. The equipment they had was in unbelievably terrible shape. Our street department, as far as funding of paving roadways and things like that, had been decreased. We had to play catch-up, and we did that by the capital improvement plan, and we finally now have got a sidewalk program in place. For the first time in 5 years, last year, we increased the number and the miles of streets that we're repaving. The streets were falling apart, but when you start cutting and cutting and cutting, like the previous council had done, you can't keep up with the stuff. So we're playing catch-up now, but we're getting there.
Mr. Miller?
We do have an improvement plan. Every street in the city is assessed with a grade factor. The street department goes out and assesses those and rates them on which streets need to be repaired before they start to crumble. They are given top priority. Not always in someone's neighborhood are their streets the ones that need that improvement. The capital improvement plan has really helped that. We've put a star on those streets that are in the worst shape. But when you're talking repairing streets, remember, everybody doesn't want higher taxes. It takes money to repair streets. And that's something that we're trying to guard against. We're trying to do it in-house and do it with the funds that we have. It takes a little longer to do it that way, but eventually we'll get it done.
Okay, unless there are any other questions from the audience, the cards to pass to the board. There are 2 more. This is the next question, and Mr. Hausman, you'll be the first to answer it. Please explain how you view the constituents of Collinsville. Please share what comes first to mind: customers, community, taxpayers, citizens, family, etc.
Did you say constituents?
Constituents.
Okay.
Yes. Would you like me to read it again?
Would you mind?
Sure. Please explain how you view the constituents of Collinsville. Please share what comes first to mind: customers, community, taxpayers, citizens, family, etc.
Well, with my being in business, one of the first things that I would say was my customers. Oftentimes when I was on the Planning Commission and as chairman of the Planning Commission, one of the things that we always talked about was no matter who came before us, whether it was someone within the city or an outside developer, we owed them the respect and time to listen to their request and give them the courtesy of our feedback, regardless of what happened. So I think the constituents, I consider them the customers, and ultimately, if I'm on the city council, they're my boss. Thank you.
Mr. Nelson?
I agree with Mr. Hausman in his latter part. if elected, we will decide how we spend taxpayers' money, the people's money, and I will never forget that, and I will always take into account of that. You know, the people of Collinsville are very caring, they're compassionate. They're a compassionate group of people who always strive to work together to achieve the same common goal, and that's to make our community safer, stronger, and more close-knit. And I know that if we all work together, that we can move Collinsville forward. Thank you.
Mr. Sebastian?
The first word that comes to mind is peers. We're equal people. We all have one vote. We all have our own personal desires, different ways to meet them, but we're peers. However, if I'm elected, I have to fall back on my leadership skills. 3 tours overseas. I know that when you're in that leadership position, you have to be a servant leader, and that's what I plan to do if elected. Thank you.
Mr. Stamen?
Yes, the first thing that comes to my mind is all of the above. I don't think you can take any of those terms you used and say one's more important than the other. We are here to represent the citizens. Part of my job, the way I view it, or the main part of my job, is to take in as much information from the citizens, develop a vision for the city, and represent all of them, all those, whether it's a family, whether it's a taxpayer, whatever. We owe the responsibility to the citizens to look after them and their needs, from emergency services to sidewalks. So.
Mr. Miller?
I've often said when someone comes up and says, "Oh, you're a politician," I said, "No, far from it. I'm a concerned citizen. I'm here because I love this great city, and I'm doing what I do because I love this great city." At one time when I was in the fire service and I was being taught to be a paramedic, you treat your patient like it was your mother, like she was your mother. How would you treat your mother? I look at that and this question, all of the above, but number one is everyone is my neighbor.
Ms. Moss?
I believe that anyone who comes to the city or to government for help deserves a fair hearing and all the help that we can provide. I've always said I hate politics, I love public service. And people who are frustrated, people who are angry, people who are unheard, they don't feel like they're being heard, you know, we have to set everything aside and try to help people get to the crux of what their situation is and what will help them. Now, again, just treating, and I think we've echoed this, but just treating everyone the way you would want to be treated. And sometimes the people who are the angriest are the people who are hurt more. So I believe that just good common sense and helping people that we can help and making sure that people understand what our limits are so that they don't think that they're being kicked to the curb, if you will. Thank you.
The next question is, what will you do to support our first responders and our school system? Mr. Nelson?
Absolutely, I 100% support our police, fire, and emergency management services, and you know, I think a lot of them are concerned about, you know, unfunded pensions, and I think that's something that we really need to look at as far as supporting them. Any updated resources or equipment or manpower needed, I would absolutely support that. As far as our school districts go, you know, I would put our teachers and staff at CHS up against any other school in the nation. And they really, really care about the success of their students because they understand that they are our future. So any means necessary that I could support the school district once on council, I would.
Mr. Sebastian?
The underfunded pensions is definitely a big thing with our police and fire. There are other ways that we can support them. I won't get into the pension right now, but there are other ways we can support them. When I was at Truman State University, I helped raise money to buy infrared cameras for our fire department there, and we originally looked to buy one, and we ended up having enough funds to buy two. That was excellent. But I mean, I'm a volunteer firefighter. I put my life on the line already. I'm a probationary officer now, so they don't let me really go on very many calls, but I'm there. I'm there with them. And I've been an EMT for 18 years for the Army. I know what it's like. They need training. They need equipment. And the schools, well, they need help with fundraising. And my family is, well, we help a lot with fundraising. I'm sure everybody's probably been to the spaghetti dinner. So if you have not, please do so. And if you have, thank you.
Mr. Stamen?
Yes, the emergency services is top of the line as far as what we have to provide for the citizens of Collinsville. There again, when I was elected, we were in dire need of improvement in both departments, particularly the fire department. I was running over 20-year-old fire trucks, a fire truck that was actually budgeted and wasn't purchased. We were buying used ambulances. We bought a used ambulance from Glen Carbon. We had slipped pretty low in development. We were down number of firemen. So we turned that around. We got the equipment the fire department needed. We're continuing to upgrade. We've pushed for an emergency communication system for the police department. So in regard to that, again, we're playing catch up, but in regard to our school system, one of the biggest things the city is focused on is the image, is trying to help. Unit 10 is a great district. I went there, our whole family went there and graduated through the system. It's very good, but the city is working to help improve the image for the city and the school system.
Mr. Miller?
As a former firefighter in the city of Collinsville, I'll put our people up against anyone. They are the best of the best. They do a dual role as a firefighter and a paramedic. They work countless hours, they work hard, and they're good. Our police department is one of the few accredited police departments in the lower part of the state. They also are the best of the best. Whatever we can do to fund them and keep them viable and give the citizens the safety that they require, we will do that as much as funds allow. We had a stellar event last council, or the council meeting before last, where we hired 6 new firefighters. First time in the history of the city that we hired 6 full-time firefighters at one time, bringing our staff up to 34 people.
Ms. Moss?
In the 12 years I was on the council, I never voted against any equipment purchases, any needs that were for the police department or the fire department. I believe we have, I've had family members who've had received the services of our emergency, of our ambulance service, and even having them come to your house to check for carbon monoxide. These guys do a great job, these men and women, both in the police department and the fire department. And as I said, I support them. I want to give them the equipment and what they need to get the job done. I also want to make sure that they're going to be able to receive their pension funding, and that there won't be any concerns with that and all of their benefits. I think we are a very fortunate city to have the emergency responders that we have. The school district, one of the things that we can do for the school district is to give them the safest city. You know, it is, and that and all the other things that we are doing and can do for them.
Mr. Hausman?
I think I echo what many folks have said. I think our fire service does a fantastic job. The response time they have is outstanding, and that plays an important role really it does when it comes to attracting businesses here and economic development. I talked to one of the firemen years ago, and he told me he had a goal of, from dispatch to hose water on the fire, 3 minutes, which is pretty impressive. I was a volunteer firefighter in the 80s, certified firefighter in Savoy, Illinois, and we had fabulous equipment. We didn't have to deal with a lot of pensions, obviously, at that time. They are part paid now. But I always felt that the city here, when I moved here in 1990, was underserved when it came to some of its equipment. No offense to Mr. Miller in his past firefighting days, but I think we're in a much better position now. For the schools, I do believe that being a loud and vocal advocate for them, the robotics team performed very well. Take a look at social media, you'll see some good things about the school. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Okay, our last question of the evening is this, and it'll be answered first by Mr. Sebastian. If you could change one thing in the city's zoning code, what would it be?
Well, that's a pretty broad question. I mean, there's no one thing. There's a lot of overhaul that needs to be done. I mean, that's not a very specific question, but I think that when we have these occupancy codes and things like that that are just kind of out there, just a long list like Santa Claus rolling down the street with a list, it can be daunting for people who are looking to rent a property or sell a property. We don't even enforce the codes that we have now, so how are we going to enforce these occupancy permits and things like that? But as far as the zoning goes, I would have to defer to the people who work it every day, and I don't, but I'm confident in our people that we have around that we can answer that.
Mr. Stamen?
I don't think there's any major change that need to be made in the zoning code, but one thing this council has done, and even the previous councils, if there is a need to a change, I bet we probably saw 5 or 10 changes in the last couple of years. The need is there, we look at it, we review it, goes through planning commission, and we change it to fit the times. Multifamily has always been an issue in town. There's been some discussion about how much multifamily does the city need. At some point, does it become too much? So I think being ever vigilant on the zoning codes, I did that for 22 years. I'm very in tune with the change that need to be made. I work for a city that's probably one of the fastest growing in the area. And we were constantly changing the zoning code to fit what was happening at that time and to adjust to the different changes.
Okay, Mr. Miller?
Unfortunately, 1 minute for some of these questions is extremely hard, and I'm going to go back to the previous question because I omitted the school district. We will work with the school district as much as we can. We want to partner with the school district. A good city needs a great school, and the schools need a great city. As far as firefighter pensions, our firefighter pension is now funded at 73%. Our police is funded at 64%, far higher than any other city in the Metro East. As far as our zoning codes, we work with the national building codes and the plumbing codes that are passed down by the state. Our zoning code, any change goes through our planning commission, and the planning commission looks at that and determines what's best for the city. They bring it back to the city council, and then the city council votes on it, and it's a uniform program.
Ms. Moss?
Well, I have actually 2 that I'll try to sneak in here. One is the occupancy situation, and I've heard from a few realtors that they feel that some of these things are detrimental to selling property in the city. The other thing is the to make sure that we are enforcing things and treating everyone equally with code violations. And it's hard, I realize it's not a snap your fingers kind of a thing, but I would say to put a lot more emphasis on being even-handed and making sure that things that are reported get handled in the same fair manner. I'm okay with the number of chickens, so that's not an issue for me tonight.
Okay, Mr. Hausman?
So the Planning Commission plays a key role in affecting our development and land use decisions, zoning. First, we need to understand what the net fiscal impact is of revenue versus cost when it comes to support development. So the commission and the city need to work and look at this holistically versus as opposed to a project-by-project, basis. An example, if we're going to be doing zoning and development on the fringes of a community, you're going to have some, cost involved with extending water, sewer lines, so on and so forth. Sure, the developer may take care of that initially, but ultimately the city is going to have responsibility to maintain and support that over time. That's why, if we take a look at some development and zoning, or some development within the city, some infill development, the net gain could be much higher because those water, sewer lines are already there, your public service is there, you're not extending fire service out into the farther reaches, and my time is up. Thank you.
Mr. Nelson?
So off the top of my head, I can't think of any really important policy that needs to be changed, but I do believe that policies need to be changed as time changes and what the people want. As far as any sort of, occupancy permits, rent control, I think this goes hand in hand with improving our economic development plan. We need to create an environment where families want to move to Collinsville. And, call me old school, but I still believe in limited government. Get off my back, get out of my pocket, and stay out of my home. So I will oppose any and all unnecessary taxes, regulations, fees, and liability for businesses and individuals. Thank you.
At this point, we'll ask each candidate to give a 1-minute closing statement, and we'll go in reverse order from how we started with the opening statement. So, Mr. Stamen, you're up.
Okay. All right. I'm running on my record, my experience, my record, and the key to that is experience. I've had a lot of experience before getting on the council, but the last 4 years we've had some very positive things happening. The last 2 years in particular, there hasn't been the negativity on the council. We've moved forward. We have a council that works very well together. I had a list of 39 things when I started on the council that I wanted to see accomplished, and I worked with the council to make those happen. 32 of those have been either completed and accomplished, or they're in the works right now on the way to getting completed. That's 82%. I just don't want to be a council member that came and voted on what the city manager brought us. I wanted open discussion, and I wanted to provide a vision for the city. And I think along with the rest of the council, we have provided that vision, and we're fulfilling that. It's not going to happen overnight, but we came a long way to that. Thank you.
Mr. Sebastian?
Are we catching up, or are we at the best we've ever been? The numbers don't lie. Look at page 116 of the audit. Look at the evidence all around town. We've got $8 million in bond debt due. The amount raised by sales tax increases doesn't even come close to making the payment. Our TIF money is going to stop once the TIF matures. Transparency, well, we hired firefighters, but where will the money come from when the grants run out? We talked about the ketchup bottle earlier. That's a great example of how private enterprise outworks the government. It looks really great. Thank you for your hard work. Speaking of hard work, I'm ready to dig in my heels and fight for Collinsville if you're willing to stand beside me. But if we stay with the status quo, if we keep heading towards that iceberg, that's what Collinsville is doing. I'm ready to lead from the front, not from the top. I'm not ready to give up. Thank you.
Mr. Nelson?
I want to conclude by once again thanking everyone in attendance tonight, especially my parents, my aunt, my two sisters, and all the other supporters in the audience. Echoing what former Councilwoman Woolard once said, I know many people think that city elections are not important and that all the major issues are settled by the state and federal government. But our founding fathers created a system that puts the individual in the center of our government, and individual ideas freely flow through the community long before they ever reach Springfield or Washington, D.C. And I will never forget that when I take into account and decide how the city spends your money. I want to bring change to this city through transparency, which is the first step in fostering a more accountable and representative government. Through accountability and working together to achieve the same end goal, we will improve our economic development plan, bring more businesses and jobs to city, and move Collinsville forward. City councilmen are supposed to be the leaders of Collinsville and enhance the quality of life for all. And if elected, I will be that leader. With that, I'm asking for your vote on April 2nd. Thank you, God bless you all, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Mr. Hausman.
Again, I'd like to say again, thanks for everyone for being here. A couple key things and points. One thing is I'm committed to continue to grow and improve my municipal knowledge and skills, just like I am in my business that I do every day, improving my best practices for the residents of Collinsville. I don't have a radical agenda to come in here and disrupt things in a negative way. Rather, I'm here to be an advocate to the city. I'm not here to get in the way of our employees or our department heads. I think they do a fabulous job. I think that my fellow commissioners on the Planning Commission would echo that their information is together. It's been great. I want to continue the goodness we've seen over the past couple of years with business coming to Collinsville, helping to retain and support those businesses that are already here and leverage those great assets that we talked about early. If you like to play here, live here, eat here, dine here, again, you might like to live here. And finally, I will commit to work with our mayor and our city council and our city staff in a positive way to not embarrass the city, but to help elevate the city. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Moss.
Thank you. I realize that much of the information I've given you tonight is not exactly uplifting, and I have to say there is more. I do want to mention one more thing, and that is that our Uptown TIF, which was formed in 1986, will be retiring, finishing, closing in 2.5 years. It expires. And I am very concerned that the city has subsidized so many things and spent so much of it, some of it on infrastructure and valuable other things. But for one example, the city has subsidized Gateway Center for hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years, and for pretty consistently. What is going to happen when that fails? What is going to happen when there are no more TIF dollars being accrued to put into all these projects? I'm optimistic that we can turn this city's financial future around, and I'll work hard to make that happen. I truly believe that for the success of the city, we need to change. Optimistic words aren't enough, and enthusiasm is not a strategy, and I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Mr. Miller.
We've heard very, very different opinions this evening on how the city's finances, zoning codes, occupancy permits are being handled and run. But there's two people on this dais that have never sat on a city council, but yet they have all the answers. I don't know how they come up with those answers, because when I first started on the council, I had to learn how to take care of all of those things and do those things. I'm not a newcomer to this business. I've been on the city council for 14 years. I want to be there for another 4 years. I want to lead this city in the next 4 years to be the greatest city in the Metro East, and believe me, we will be. Thank you, and I would appreciate your vote.
Please remember to vote in the Collinsville Consolidated Election. Early voting begins on March 18 at the Collinsville Township Senior Center, and Election Day is April 2. So thank you very much for your attendance tonight, and thank you to our candidates for your excellent presentations.